Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot. Somebody asked me to record and I forgot. So I'm just hitting record, but they missed the whole wow explanation. So
Yeah.
I was like, we should get this on camera. And then I was
And
like,
so
oh,
it
yeah,
says
I'm
here,
supposed
can't
to-
hear you. Lynn says can't hear
Oh, we
you.
can't hear us now. Oh, okay.
Can you hear us now, Lynn? Okay, got
Oh,
some
okay.
thumbs up.
All
Okay.
right, great.
Yeah. So it's the first time we've done a reserve, and it was just a really fun exercise of just tasting through our barrels and just trying to like pick out ones that we love, basically.
Right. Okay. Well, I started talking about the white wine and what's special about the Ribolla Gialla and the Friulano, the Tokai Friulano that are in here, and why we decided to put that in there and what it adds to the wine. Maybe you can fill in with that.
Okay. So the Linda Vista is a single vineyard, right? And so we're trying to like really just express that place with the but that doesn't mean we make the wine the same in any single vineyard, because places are all different. And so we try to make the wine to really highlight what we think is special about that place. So with Linda Vista, we're very careful to maintain that freshness. That's what we think is special. So the white wine, the reason is a very different mentality than a single vineyard wine. This is a blended wine. So this is more the craft of blending and trying to create balance and completeness. So, because single vineyard doesn't have to be necessary. You want it to be balanced, but it doesn't have to be uber balanced. It just has to be balanced enough, but it's all about the character and individuality of that place. Where this blend here is about impeccable balance, because we're using all of our blending tools. And so in this case, the Sauvignon Blanc is the backbone. So the Sauvignon Blanc component of this is like kind of like fresh cut pineapple and sort of like fresh grapefruit. And it's very like zingy and right down the middle. So the Semillon, which is traditional to blend with Sauvignon Blanc, fills out the flesh of the wine. So the Semillon is naturally fleshy, and that's more like beeswax and like dried fig kind of characters, but that's really has a waxiness to it. If you ever had it's hard to find 100% Semillons, but if you see a good one from the Hunter Valley or Margaret River in Australia, it'd be fun to try, because they can be very low alcohol, but they have this waxiness. It's a beautiful broad texture, and that's what Semillon contributes. And then the Sauvignon Blanc backbone can be lacked. Usually Sauvignon Blanc, it's pretty unusual for Sauvignon Blanc to have a great finish. It's all kind of up the first half of the palate. Ribolla Gialla is all about the finish. Ribolla is not very expressive on the nose, but it's this wonderful finish that's sort of like minerally wet stones, sort of like oyster shell finish that kind of lingers, and that's the Ribolla's role in the blend. And then the Tokai Friulano is a little bit of spiciness. Think like a very restrained Gewürztraminer, and that's only in here. But you see this one, it was 5%. So it's just a little touch, because you don't want to take over the wine with all those aromatics, but it's just kind of interesting. So that's the idea on the blend. And then this is barrel fermented. And then unlike the Linda Vista, we think that this benefits from a little
Chardonnay.
that unlike our Linda Vista Chardonnay, which has no new oak, because I think that the new oak would diminish that wine. In this case, we like the new oak because that just gives you a little creaminess on the back that kind of rounds it out. So that's the white blend. We've been doing this blend since 2005, and we just kind of came, by 2006, we kind of figured out what we were trying to do. And then ever since then, we just try to do our best to kind of just maintain, this particular balance.
And this is really the wine that put us on the map. When we first started making this wine, there was no other wines quite like this being made in California at the time. And a lot of our wines have that freshness, go well with food. And a lot of the farm to table restaurants in California and around the country were buying really focused on local ingredients, but they were buying all French wine. And they,
whoever he is.
Oh, the drinking window. Glenn wants
Paul
to.
Bernstein.
Keep going.
okay. And so people, wine writers started discovering this wine and writing about it, and restaurants started buying the wine and realizing that it's a local wine and they can pair it with local food, like the French wines and like the European wines that they were buying to have on their list. So this is really the wine writers started writing about, wine writers started writing about, restaurants started discovering, and really kind of solidified our place as a food wine in the restaurant world, and kind of got us going.
And then and it's interesting, Glenn asked what the drinking
Yeah.
window for this white, and as I was driving here, as far as just now for the Zoom, I got a call on the phone from the wine buyer at the Lakeside Grill at the Wynn in Las Vegas, asking us if we have any 2011 white that he can pour at the Lakeside Grill. So, because he was our intern actually like 12 or 15 years ago. And so, but now he's, working as a sommelier in Las Vegas. But this one here is a really fun one to age. That's why we hold it back for a year before we release it in bottle. But, we're drinking the 11 right now. The 2008 is drinking really well right now. We had a 2008 recently. So that's okay. Matthew Cohen's drinking the 2013 right now. I'm drinking the 2014 Ribolla right now.
Ribolla Gialla.
Ribolla Gialla.
Yeah.
And so all of the wines age. That's
Mhm.
that's kind of the whole idea. And so that's why some of them we have to hold back before we release them, because
And
we-
we
so they can
actually
get a little
love
time.
aging white wines. I mean, people talk a lot about aging red wines, but we're lucky enough that we are have a lot of friends who are winemakers, and we trade wine with them. And we've been doing this long enough that we'll get a case from some winemaker friend of ours, and we'll just stash it in our wine storage room. And like during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, we had all these wines and boxes that said drink in 2018, drink in 2019. And it was 2020. It was like, okay, it's time to go through and pull out all those bottles and check them and see if they're ready to drink. And we had all this amazing wine, and we actually like put it in our like drink now shelving. And we're drinking these 2011s, 2012 white wines, and they're delicious. It's a great time to be drinking them. So it's pretty exciting to just have that time capsule there.
Mhm. With the white, actually, in the first few years, I think it's actually benefits from being decanted.
Oh, and look, Chance Brown is also drinking the
Ribolla.
2013 right now. That's cool.
He said it might be the 14 Ribolla, because it says.
Oh,
it says-
so are we,
yeah.
Steve? Oh, okay. Oh,
But
all
yeah,
right,
throw
sorry.
it. It'd be with whites, rather than pull it right out of the fridge, pull it out of the fridge and toss it into a decanter,
Uh-huh.
and then I think you'll be surprised how it fleshes out and a lot of the flavors come out.
Well, and that's a good point about temperatures. I always say people drink their whites too cold and their reds too warm. The white wine, usually coming straight out of a refrigerator, it's so cold that it hides a lot of the flavors and the aromas. And we drink the whites and the reds at about the same temperature. Often red wine can get warmed up, and it can get a little hot tasting or a little bit too like volatile tasting. So with sometimes with a tiny bit of chill on it, it's good. So just keep that in mind too. Temperature is important. Right.
Yeah, and air.
And
pretty
air.
much.
Yeah.
Pretty much any of our, because since our wines are kind of made to age, which means that we are very careful with oxygen during our aging process when they're in barrel. Because they can be a lot of times for winemaking techniques, especially if you have a lot of tannin, you can try to soften the tannin in the winery, but then so the wines you pour right out of the on release and it's very soft. Those aren't going to age. So we're really careful to protect the oxygen, sort of the ability, the vine's oxygen eating capacity during the fermentation and during the aging. And if you think it's really tight, we do rackings, which is when you pump the wine out of the barrel and back into the barrel, and it's kind of like decanting it in the cellar and it moves it along. But we pay a lot of attention to the different wines to sort of whether to move them along or whether to keep them preserved. So when they're bottled, they're pretty much all good to go with aging, which means that they're all going to benefit from decanting when they're young. Even the light-bodied ones, or even the whites, I think you'll be surprised because they have ability to eat up a lot of oxygen. The same thing with our wines if you only drink half the bottle and leave it for the next day or 2 more days later, a lot of times it's better the next day. You don't have to worry about it going bad. They'll last for a few days, especially if you put them in the fridge, but leave it on the counter for a day or 2 is fine, because again, they're pretty they're still pretty resilient when we go to bottle.
Yeah, so okay, the next wine is 2019
Oh, cool.
Ribolla just opened. Awesome. Because we're gonna have the 2020 Bengier Vineyard Ribolla Gialla. Do you want to talk a little bit about, okay, so you had in the white wine, there was the 2020 white wine. This Bengier Ribolla is a component. It's one of the wines that's in this blend. So it's fun to taste the whole blend and then taste one of the components to see, and then you can go back and forth. If you have them open at the same time, you can see how this wine influences and is a component of this, like what it adds to the white wine.
Yep. And this is the one I mentioned, is like, it's not super aromatic. It's a stony minerality. So this is the one, if you're having oysters or like clams or just anything that you want steely white with, that's what this is all about. And we
Something
love,
with a little saltiness to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
grilled fish, or it's just this one's all about the seafood. If you don't eat seafood, then I maybe grilled fava beans, or kind of like veggies that have a little char or smoke to them, like your grilled, like you throw kale on the grill and get the crisp up the edges a little bit, that's what this wine's going to be with. Yeah.
And this is the Bengier Vineyard. So this is the first place that the Ribolla Gialla was planted in California. There was one of Steve's vineyard clients, and somebody who came a dear friend and mentor was a guy named George Vare, and he was the first one to kind of in Napa and really in California to discover Ribolla Gialla and to this variety when he was on a trip in Friuli, and he brought cuttings home in his suitcase and grafted it to his vineyard here in Napa. And then Steve started working with him in his vineyard and had no idea about Ribolla Gialla, never heard of it, and went on a trip to Friuli with George and his wife Elsa to learn more about how to grow the grape and make the wines. And that's how these wines came about. And then unfortunately, George passed away and Elsa sold the property. But the good news is that they sold the property to the Bengier family. And we were nervous that they were going to want to tear out the Ribolla Gialla and plant Cabernet Sauvignon like everybody else does in the Napa Valley. But they really figured out that Ribolla Gialla is very special and there's a really special story to it. And so they kept it growing, and we still get those grapes, and which we have from that vineyard since 2005.
They called me up and asked me when it was in escrow, they said, will you keep managing the vineyard and sell the fruit to the same people and keep everything the same? And that was like the best phone call I got all year, basically.
Yeah.
So if you've had the like Massican white wines, or they have Ribolla in them, or Rhyme or Arnott Roberts, we sell them the fruit from the Bengier vineyard that I manage. And so it's a tight little community of winemakers.
All right, next wine. Is there another bottle floating around somewhere? Okay, this is the Yacht Mill Vineyard Zinfandel 2020.
Okay. So we love making Zinfandel from different sites. These are fruits this is fruit we didn't grow ourselves. This fruit is grown by the Hoxie family. They're one of the oldest organically produced vineyards in California, and probably in California and in Napa. They've been certified organic since the 80s, and really, really great family. And so we always feel really comfortable buying their fruit for our wine. And they have Zinfandel that's just north of the town of Yountville. It's Yount Mill Road. It's on Yount Mill Road, north of the town of Yountville. So that's it's still the southern part of the Napa Valley, cooler climate. So most of the Zinfandel from Napa Valley is from further north, like Calistoga, Childs Valley, where it's a lot hotter. So this is not the big plump jammy Zinfandels that you might be used to from Napa or Sonoma. This one is peppery, and it's like fresh crushed. It's like fresh crushed berries. If you pick like Marion berries and blackberries and some black peppercorns and crush them in a mortar and pestle, that's more the aromatics that you get out of this Zinfandel. It's really peppery because that's what Zinfandel does when it's in a cooler climate. And we pick it nice and early. There's a lot of folks with Zinfandel. Zinfandel has the berries ripen at different rates. So a lot of winemakers don't want to pick until the last berries turn color, but because they have these berries that stay pink and green within the same cluster. For us, we like that because the pink berries are like the bright poppy red fruits, and the green berries give you some acidity. And then the blackberries are obviously the lush flavors. And so that's how we like it. So our Zin is lower in alcohol, and it's when I say lower, it's still Zinfandel, so it's 13 or something like that. But it's not the 15 or 16% that you often will associate with Zinfandel. So hopefully you enjoy this one, just a whole nother side of the Zinfandel character. It's a little bit more maybe like a Santa Cruz Mountains Zinfandel. It's more of a cooler climate expression.
Yeah, any questions so far? If you do, just like type them into the chat. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. We'd love to hear any comments or questions that you have.
Yeah. So I still do vineyard consulting, and one of our clients had the Hamill family over in Sonoma. They decided not to make theirs. I don't know why they decided this, but they decided not to make Zinfandel anymore
From their
own vineyard up on Sonoma Mountain, and that's one of our consulting clients. So, we have our hands in with the farming, and the vineyard was planted in the 1880s. So that's what we'll be doing. So this year we're going to be making the wine from the 1880s vineyard up on Sonoma Mountain.
We're super excited.
Very
about
excited.
It. Yeah.
Certified organic and dry farmed, and and we're participating on the viticulture. So I feel really good about that. That's gonna be exciting.
So up till now, we've just been doing making a Zinfandel once in a while, but I think going forward, we'll probably start making it every year.
Yeah,
it's very popular. People love the Zinfandel. It's a different style. It's a little, it's really fun.
We actually sell a lot of it in England and Germany and places like that because Zinfandel is very exotic over there.
Because it's mostly grown in the United States, mostly grown in California. Only in California, yeah. All right, Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. How about that? After all these other crazy varieties.
Yep. So the Napa Cab,
2019 vintage.
2019 was
what's the name of the 1880 vineyard?
Oh, it's called the Armor Plate Vineyard, owned by Hamill family. Yeah, that's a strange name, Armor Plate, but the Hamill family, like their grandfather was in the cavalry, and his horse was named Armor Plate, so they named the vineyard after his horse.
Yeah.
So 2019 was Napa Cab. 2019 was just if there was ever such a thing as a perfect growing season, that was it. We had spring rains, we had no fires, we had really mild conditions, we had a nice crop, and it just ripened perfectly. So we're really happy with the 19 vintage. It's soft and really fruity. The spring rains usually create a softer wine because dry springs is when you get more structure and tannin in the wine. The plant makes tannin to kind of help itself deal with the dry conditions. So 19 was this nice spring rain, so it made for soft Cabernet, and really fruity. We have more vineyards because we've continued to take on vineyards that we're farming, and so we have. I think this 19 was like another level of complexity because we have more vineyard locations in it. So I'm really excited about some of our new vineyard locations. One on Mount Veeder, one in Calistoga specifically.
And what do those contribute?
So the Mount Veeder one, it brings this old school, like fresh, like if you take a fresh bell pepper and break it in half and get smell, that's in Mount Veeder. And so that's that type of greenness in a warmer location can taste like a cooked pepper, which is not good. We don't want. So I love the Mount Veeder, that fresh, snappy pepper. And we're talking, so it's just a very small percentage, because you don't want something like that to take over, but it's a beautiful accent in Cabernet. for food because it's mostly all the fruit flavors. And then Calistoga, that one's bringing all this tons of structure and backbone. It's in Franz Valley, so it's basically between Knights Valley and Calistoga. You go over a short little pass, rocky up there, and you get a lot of fog that comes in from Sonoma, and it's a great little spot for Cabernet. It makes super structured cab. That was one thing that I feel like we've been missing, and now we're going to have that to work with. So those are two new. That's not yet in the 19, but the Mount Veeder is. And it's a tiny amount, probably like 3% or something like that. But it's, again, with Cabernet, it's all about layering these vineyards and finding complexity, because Cabernet, when you blend Cabernet, all the flavors are still there and they just layer on themselves. It's totally different than some varieties like Pinot that you can't blend because they kind of cancel each other out. With Cab, they should just layer. So the Cab is going after an old school idea of Cab. Like we both started working in California in agriculture in the early mid 90s, and so we started, the first great wines we had were like Napa Cabs from the late 80s, early 90s, and that's before they got as heavy and rich and like fruit bomb as they did in the late 90s into the 2000s. And so we're trying to go back to that era with our style, but we've learned so much about viticulture since then. Like we were, back then hardly anyone was farming organically. We didn't know about light on the fruit. We didn't know much about the crop load. We didn't know much about cover crops. So there's so many, the trellises were just like straight up. Now we know about like shading and stuff with our trellises. So I think that it's really fun to go back to that concept of balance, but with everything we now know about growing grapes. So we have nice plush tannins and fully ripe fruit, but still have energy and vibrancy. It's not all cooked out with like, really late harvest. It's still vibrant, and that's kind of what we're trying to find, that tension between plushness and vibrancy in the Cab. And because Cab, if it can do both at the same time, that's exciting. That when you have that the tension between plushness and vibrancy, and also just kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like the different vineyards that Steve said that we're taking on, one of our models is to lease vineyards from people that own homes in Napa that want to have usually a small vineyard around their house, but in some cases, like of the Linda Vista vineyard, it's a bigger vineyard, but they don't farm their vineyard, and so we have the opportunity to farm the vineyard ourselves, and that way we get total control on how the grapes are grown. And for the last few years, we've added like a couple of vineyards. People have reached out to us, and usually they're a couple of acres to between 1 and 3 acres, but it's often a really good deal for us. Sometimes we just farm the vineyard in exchange for getting the grapes. So we can kind of build our Cabernet, increase the amount and diversity of the vineyards that we get our Cabernet from for a pretty reasonable price for us compared to what like the market price of buying grapes are, or buying the land and farming that. So that's kind of a way that we've been able to make our little business work. But then
keep our prices reasonable.
Yeah. And then in 2017, we were able to buy a property. We have always been making wine in like places that we rent, warehouse spaces that we rent, or other wineries that we rent space in to make wine. And in 2017, and the zoning in Napa is really restrictive on being able to build a winery. You have to have 10 acres, you have to get lots of permits, the neighbors all have to approve. It's pretty long and onerous and expensive. In 2017, we were able to find this little property that had a winery permit. It still needed a lot of upgrades, but we were able to purchase it, and we're slowly doing the upgrades over time. And we call that the Phoenix Vineyard. There was a vineyard on the property with the winery. It was mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, but it also has some Merlot and some Cabernet Franc. And another thing that some of you have in your for the 12 Bottle Club members is the 2020 vintage of the Cabernet Franc from the Phoenix Vineyard. And we have some years we've just blended, we make the Cabernet Sauvignon from that vineyard. That's what's mostly planted there. And some years we just add the Cabernet Franc into the blended into the Cabernet Sauvignon. But in 2020, we decided to bottle it on its own. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? So that's what's in this bottle.
Yep. Yeah. So this is marine shale soil. It's shale. Napa has almost no shale. Napa is almost all volcanic rock. And the volcanic rock gives you that power that we're kind of known for. The shale is interesting because it's so much more aromatic and it's leaner on the mid palate and more aromatics, high tone. And so it's almost like you see shale is more common on hills over in Europe and in some of the wine regions that have like more perfumey type of wines. And so for us, it's pretty, we feel like we got really lucky finding this place on this little patch of shale because it's exactly the kind of wines we love. And so this Cab Franc is, think the body of a light bodied Pinot Noir, even though it's Cabernet Franc, and huge aromatics, just explosive aromatics. And so there's a lot going on in there, in those wines, sage and lavender and muddled berries and chili, lots of chili flakes in there. And when I'm not talking about subtle, like you'll smell chili flakes when you smell that nose. It's really cool. And so as we're bringing this vineyard, kind of reviving this old vineyard from the 80s that was pretty neglected when we got it. And so we converted it 5 years ago to organic, and kind of like, last year it was fully dry farmed. The roots are finally getting down. I think, we're going to go back to it. The Cabernet Franc will be included in the Phoenix Cab as we get more Phoenix Cab off the vineyard. And so this is probably the only time we're going to bottle it, but it's a really fun, like peek at a different type of Cab Franc entirely.
And finally, the last wine of the day is our Napa Valley red wine. And this is the 2018 vintage that you have. And this wine is a really special wine for us. It's the first wine we ever made, and really the reason we got started in the wine business. I'd said we made wine in our garage and from grapes that we found from different places over the years. And then Steve got a job consulting in vineyards in Napa, and we moved here. And he came home one day from working the vineyards and was like, oh my God, I just tasted the best Merlot grape I've ever tasted in my life. We have to make wine to sell out of this. And there was some Cabernet Sauvignon we were able to buy from another one of his clients. And our first vintage was the 2003, and it was a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. And the Merlot is from a vineyard called the Red Hen Vineyard. And then since then we've added a little bit of Cabernet Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. And then sadly the Red Hen Vineyard sold. And this is the problem with buying grapes from vineyards, is that eventually they might change hands, and the new owners weren't really up to farming it organically, weren't really going to be willing to work with us on farming it the way we wanted to farm it. And we decided and then that was just going to be for a year or two. And then after that, we aren't going to have access to the grapes anymore. So 2018 is sadly the last vintage of this wine that we ever have made.
Yeah, 2003 to 2018.
Yeah.
So it was a good run, but now Joseph Phelps owns that vineyard. And talk
about the wine a little bit.
Yeah. So this was, it's always been savory. It's always been like a lot of black olive and black tea and, kind of cedar box mixed in with the fruits. And, this is, again, is a blended wine like the white wine. And so there's the complexity and the balance. And so, and it ages really nicely. And, we had a 2006 not long ago. I thought it was, going strong. I had 2003 not long ago. And so this is a good one to stick underneath the bed if you want to age it, but for sure decant it for a couple hours before drinking it. But it's a little bit sad because it's the end of the era, though. The Phoenix the vineyard that we now own. So we have that the rest of our lives, and our kids, if they want it, is going to replace this one,
Yeah.
as our sort of top wine. So bittersweet on this.
But the wine's delicious.
The wine's delicious.
And somebody Corvin did tonight to taste a glass.
I think that was the Cab
Oh,
Franc.
that was the Cab Franc.
Yeah, the best Corvin.
Any other comments or questions? I think there was something else I wanted to say. No, I don't remember.
Yeah. So some other news, we are,
That's it.
yeah, so we're, we had some hail yesterday that
I mentioned that. Yeah.
it looks like it took out our Stardust vineyard in Calistoga. So
Oh,
yeah.
man. It took
So that,
out. What does that mean?
he says, Caleb says, took it on the chin.
Okay.
So we'll see what that means. But
You can
anyways, that's the,
recover. You can brush it
Exactly.
off, get a little stitches.
so that's the beauty of farming, is that Mother Nature bats last. And so, but we have all the rest of the vineyards are fine.
Okay.
And that spring rains really saved us with growth overall. So I think we're good there.
Yeah.
I'm doing something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm teaching a class at UC Davis in the viticulture department on organic farming. And so that's been really fun. And a few of the professors are coming and sitting in on the class as well. So that's, it's really great that they're supportive and they really want to learn as well. So that's exciting. And we're still doing it's the second year of the 280 project, which is our internship that we're collaborating with some folks in San Francisco for people of color to get their foot into the door in our industry. So we line up a different field trip for them every Friday. So that's going really well, and that's kind of one of the things we're excited about. It's nice, we finally gotten over with our business to the point where it's not survival anymore, so it's time to start giving back. And so it's really fun to be doing these things.
That's the theory anyways.
Yeah. And we're in the process of trying to purchase a warehouse, because we currently have some of our barrels we can't fit all of our barrels in the winery, so we're storing them at Ashes and Diamonds, and we're trying to get a warehouse so that we'll have them under our own warehouse, and it'll be, we have a lot of control of Ashes and Diamonds because I'm the winemaker, but it'll just be one more notch of control, so that it's completely in-house. And those are some of our highlights.
No, the bigger thing that I was going to mention too, very exciting, is, so the story that happened with the Red Hen Vineyard, which it was a vineyard that we feel really strongly about, that we loved, that was the reason we started making wine, but we didn't own it. We were buying grapes every year, and then it was sold, and we don't have access to those grapes anymore. So really the only way you can ensure that doesn't happen is if you own the vineyard, but vineyards, as you can imagine, are very expensive. So we partnered with our neighbor, actually, who was interested. He's made his money, and he and his wife both made their money in tech, and they were really interested in buying a vineyard in Napa. And so we are very small sweat equity partners in a vineyard that we bought together, but we're the managing partner. So we are doing all the farming. It's a big vineyard that we purchased in Carneros in the southern part of Napa. It's a 35-acre vineyard, so we'll be selling the grapes, a lot of the grapes, but we're converting it to organic, where some of the parts of the vineyard need to be replanted, but it's the same shale soil that Steve talked about at the Phoenix Vineyard, and it's on this south-facing slope that is like on the side of a hill. It kind of goes along the top part of the hill. It's this long, skinny vineyard, and the quality is going to be amazing. We're super excited. It's going to allow us to reconfigure some of the things that we have planted in our home vineyard so that we can make more quantities of some of the beloved varieties of the unusual stuff like Refosco and Schioppettino and Ribolla Gialla. And it's going to be an amazing site. We're going to be able to get some more Cabernet Sauvignon from there, some Cabernet Franc from there, and some Pinot Noir. There's Pinot Noir growing there as well, Chardonnay, and
Vermentino.
Vermentino
and Carneros on a shale hillside. So that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So we're super excited about that. So that's the other big news. It's been a lot of work to get it up and running. Our vineyard manager, Caleb, is doing a great job. And yeah, so lots of new things happening here.
And then one question here from Stacy is, what wine would you like to make that you have not done yet? And the wine, so I don't know if I've even told you this, but there's
Please.
an ancient Roman style of winemaking that they dried the grapes in the sun about halfway down, not all the way to raisins. And then you go out in a boat about a mile offshore and you get really clean seawater, and you reconstitute the semi-dried grapes with seawater and you ferment it. And basically it was all over the Mediterranean for like 1,500 years. So it must have tasted good, but I've never heard of a single person making it. And so I want to make it and find out what it tasted like. I mean, what were they drinking? What did they like about it? It's going to be fascinating. I can't wait. So that's this fall, hopefully.
Yeah.
Last year we did a Retsina a couple of years ago. I don't know if you were aware of it. And with a 2,000-year-old recipe from Pliny, the elder, for the Retsina, and it was the same kind of thing. It was like they drank this for a long time. What did it taste like? And it's really good, really good.
So with having our own,
Yeah, sweet and salty.
yeah.
Yeah, what's wrong with sweet and salty, right? I'm
It's
pretty
like
sure that's good.
chocolate with salt or something. Having our own place to make wine, our own winery. We started, when we started, we were making wine in our backyard, and we do all these fun experimental wine projects. And then when we were making wine and renting space in other places, we'd pay by the case. So every case that we made had to be something, you know, that we knew we could sell, and we couldn't do the experimentation anymore. So now that we're back to having our own place that we can make wine, it's all bets are off now. We're like going crazy, doing fun stuff. Hopefully you guys will, you know, as wine club members, you'll always get first crack. We'll offer all of that stuff to you first, and usually sells out to all of our wine club members. And you know, we love the loyalty we get from you all, and the support and the ongoing, you know, assurance that we're on the right track and that you're with us no matter, you know, how wacky our ideas are. But the wines are always well made and solid and delicious. And you know, we feel really lucky to have you guys in our camp. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts or anything you want to say about the wines or and the sweet vermouth? Yes. Sweet vermouth is always a very popular. We're getting to the point where we're actually going to be able to make more. We buy the grapes for the sweet vermouth from the same place that we got the Zinfandel, the Yachtmill vineyard. And they're because of us planting more. We were also thinking about planting it at the new vineyard, but there's the people who own Yachtmill are really nice and really great to work with. And so we're going to let them keep growing it for us, but they're planting more for us. So we'll be able to expand the vermouth. And by the way, the name of the new vineyard is called Cressida. So you'll start seeing that on the wines, the Cressida vineyard. So what else? Any other questions, comments, thoughts? I'm glad you all are enjoying. We have people coming from small islands in the Caribbean, Vermont, Washington, D.C., Midwest, all kinds of.
Oh, Colin wants to know how much my mother charges for the Aleppo pine sap.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's out there picking those little sap balls off the pine tree and putting them in an envelope. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
North Carolina, we love you. Yeah. So come on and visit us. We'd love to see you all.
Oh, Matt wants to know a little bit about the Tondu project. So the Tondu grapes are grapes we don't grow, but we pay them extra to farm them organically for us from the Yolo County, which is the inland from us, warmer. And the idea with Tondu is a fresh, crisp, daily drinking wine. Is that we're trying to make, like, if you imagine like a carafe in the middle of your table in somewhere in the Mediterranean area on vacation, and you go, what is this good wine? That's the idea with the Tondu, you know, just crunchy and fruity and moderate alcohol and just good with food and affordable.
right.
Yeah,
Perfect for Charleston summer. Yes,
exactly.
for sure. Thank you. So great that you guys, we get to do this. This is one of the silver linings of the whole crazy COVID thing, is that we've discovered that we can connect to you all through Zoom.
Yep.
And you know, if we can see you out here now, but we can also, like Brenda said, fills the void in between the trips. So
Yep, and make it out to come visit us before too long, hopefully.
what of the recent shipment, what's the best to drink now? So here's the recent shipment.
I would say the best to drink now, I'd probably drink the Ribolla Gialla with seafood on the first, late this spring or early summer. The Zinfandel is ready to drink. The Cab Franc is ready to drink. You know, you could, if you wanted to wait on something, I'd hold off on the Linda Vista Reserve is ready to drink. And then the white wine is probably the what I drink after the Linda Vista, and I'd probably drink the Cab after the Zin and the Cab Franc, and then I'd drink the red wine last.
In like 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you could drink it now, but toss it in a decanter and swish it around for an hour before you're planning on drinking it.
Yeah, the sheep. Today was the last day of the sheep. I actually didn't get to say goodbye to the shepherd. It's been really fun. We mutual, like through a friend of ours, got connected with this guy who has a small flock of sheep, and our neighbor next to us has a big open field that we usually help her manage. We usually mow it, but he reached out to us about needing to graze his sheep, and so she hired him, and then we have a little area that we needed to have grazed down, and so we were super happy. It was super great to have them on the property. I loved hearing them.
You can't be stressed out when there's sheep around.
Yeah, they have. And then the shepherd just parked his trailer and hung out there for 2
Yeah.
weeks, and his dogs were all around. It was great having some animal presence there. Felt really good.
Yeah.
I hope we can get them every year. So come visit. We'll post the next time they're here, so you guys can come. All right. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great rest of your day, no matter where you are. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you
Thanks.
soon.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
We're from all over the country, honey.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep, there you go.